Hey, Marty.
Hey, how are you?
Yes, John, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Hey, I just gonna bring up, I might as well tell you directly a couple little things on the minutes, just more
Okay,
grammar kind of things.
sure. Yeah, I have a
Um,
editor thing, but it doesn't catch everything I'm finding out.
well, and so for me, I became the vice chair, and so I'm thinking that should be next to my name.
Oh, I thought that was. Yep, it sure should be. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just it might help somebody down the line when I actually run a meeting, if that ever happens.
Okay.
Um,
Yep, I will get
And then
that
a couple
corrected.
times, one time my name was misspelled, and one time there was a Mr. missing. Not a
Okay.
big deal, but
Yep. Well, I wanted to,
that's
I mean, it's a legal document. It is a big deal to me. So I will make sure all that is corrected. Do you know exactly, let's see, Mr.
where it is.
exactly where it is?
Yeah, let me go scan. Okay, so the vice chair obviously would be at the top.
Right.
Um, and then when I commented on something, Mr. McCartney, that one looks good. Da-da-da-da-da. Mr. McCartney, that one looks good.
I'd rather say Vice Chair McCartney if, or
Well,
it's Mr.
yeah,
Okay, but
I don't really care about that, honestly. I was just thinking that it might help somebody if I'm running a meeting and somebody's wondering, okay, who the heck is that?
of course.
Okay, so down at adjournment for motion, it says McCartney made a motion to adjourn. So that
Okay.
would be a Mr. And then it was a little bit above that. Oh yeah, up. Where I lost it again. Okay, so where it said where the heading motion is,
Uh-huh.
just above that, it says Mr. McCarty.
Up, it is. We had a coworker. She went to a different department, and her last name was McCarty. So I bet I was
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
probably, yeah, I was like, oh,
And actually, I think that would have been acceptable to the, I don't know, the Romans or the English, whoever. No, not the English. Yeah, because we're related to McCartneys are related to McCarthy's and McCarthy's, and yeah, just they weren't good spellers back when.
okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm studying the case, and so I'll go back to doing that.
Okay, I'll get those little corrections made and just bring it up when you do
Yeah,
the
I'll just say a couple of little
minutes.
grammar things that
Yeah,
we talked about. Yeah.
yeah, and that way I can
Okay.
then we can go ahead and get them approved if everybody else is on board
Okay.
with it.
Thanks,
Okay,
Marty. We'll talk to you after a little while.
okay, thanks.
Take care. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Even though I have a big sticky in the middle of my screen, I will totally miss it.
Here we go. There's Brian.
My background here is New Hampshire in the fall. I wish we had that many colors in the aspen.
Okay. Okay. So like right now, I only see you guys. I don't see anything on the screen. Am I missing anything? Or you haven't put a screen on yet,
Yeah,
right?
I haven't shared anything yet.
Okay, good. I may, yeah. It just looks weird. Okay.
Oh, Marty, actually, can you make it so that I can share? It looks like I'm blocked for the minute. Thanks.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I totally forgot.
No, appreciate that.
Is anyone else going to present anything today that I need to make a co-host?
Not that I'm aware. James or Shelley, did you have anything that you wanted to share on the screen?
No, I'm just going to talk. I don't have anything to share. It probably would get a little bit lengthy if I did some screen sharing.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Hello, Brian.
Hello. I need to turn my volume up.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
It's not about you. It's that I had it down on my end.
Oh, I hear you loud and clear.
Good.
So it's weird. It's like, normally I have my whole screen and I can see, you know, the, like my mic, where I can mute my microphone on the bottom and everything. Right now, I only have the participants on the right. So I might go out and come back in if that's okay, and see if I load the big picture up again.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. I'll see you in a minute. All right. Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, you still won't go away. Well, there. That's weird. Maybe I just need
I'm not as good at troubleshooting the Zooms.
If you move your mouse around to the bottom, and that's when it gives you the controls more.
Yeah, but really, all I have is the sidebar of participants. It's
So if you move your mouse to the top right, there's a box, a little box will appear that says view. And if you open up that and click around there, does that change it?
all I have is chat pin, hide non-video participant. Really, all I have is the participants. I don't have the rest of the deal. So
That's all we have right now.
you don't have, but don't you have like your screen where you can mute, you know, you can turn your microphone on and off and stuff like that?
Down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's the mute and video.
If you move your mouse around, doesn't that make all that show up?
No, and honestly, I've done a
Move your
zillion Zooms. It's like the weirdest thing I've
Yeah,
ever.
you might, Diane, just want to see if you can get out of it. Are you having trouble just getting out?
Ah, there we go. Wait, I see something. I see something. Maybe it will help me. Hold on.
I shared for a moment my screen, so, and then I stopped.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Oh, so who knows? I don't know. I don't know. All right, let's just hope everything works. Now on, we'll see. All right. Should I start? It's 3:03. Okay, we have everybody here. So I'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Adjustment for Cook County for 20. And our first item is the approval of minutes from June 21st, 22.
I would, this is John, I would approve or move to approve the minutes as presented, except for a couple of grammar items that I went over with Marty.
I'll second that.
All
Diane, you're frozen.
in favor?
It sounded like she called for all in favor.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on.
So
mm,
this is John, I vote aye.
okay.
This is Chris, aye.
Brian?
Yes, sir. Since I was not a BOA member at that point in time, please advise me, Zach. Can I or can I not vote on this?
Mr. Bates, I think you could vote to approve if you wanted to, but mostly what the Board of Adjustment has done, if they weren't there for the previous month, is to abstain.
I will abstain.
And it looks like Diane is going to hop right back in. Sorry, everyone, for the inconvenience. Let's just see if she can get back in really quickly.
These things happen.
Yeah.
the wonders of technology.
Yep.
Do we have a quorum?
With
Yes, we
silence
will.
out there where she lives.
Yeah, she has trouble from time to time, it seems, on there. But yes, technically there's a quorum here. And if Diane can't get back on, then John would be as vice chair, he would act as chair. I think I'm going to go ahead and give her a call. So if you'll just bear with me here.
I will be right back.
Yeah, first, yeah, bye. Okay, are we good?
Madam Chair, there was the motion to approve with some corrections. And there was a second and a vote from all the members except for you to approve that.
Okay, since I didn't hear the corrections, either could they be read to me and I can vote, or if we have a 3, then it's fine, whichever way you'd like to proceed.
I mean, go ahead.
There were my corrections. This is John.
Okay.
Yeah, there was, I thought vice chair should be next to my name in case, down the road, I actually run one of these meetings.
Great.
And then there was a couple spelling things on my name, basically. So yeah, I didn't really want to go over it and take up time in the meeting. So that was it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, then I will vote aye and we can be unanimous and then we can move on to our case. And I'm going to keep my video off just because since I had a little glitch, I'm just not going to add another layer here.
I do want to add that Brian abstained from voting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Okay, Madam Chair, so if you are all ready, I'll go ahead and share my screen and let me know if you aren't seeing it or if at any point it starts to sort of glitch or you aren't able to hear me.
Everything is good.
Thank you. So this is case VAR 22005, the Grand Canyon Oasis sign variance request. For this application, the applicant is James Carpentier of International Sign Association. They have an office in Mesa. Grand Canyon Oasis LLC of Flagstaff is the property owner. The property is located approximately 11 miles north of Sunset Crater on Highway 89. And the zoning for this property is actually split between CG 10,000, that's commercial general, and G general. That zone is typically a single family residential zoning classification. This request is for a sign variance, and it has two parts to it. So one is for a 22-foot tall sign where 15 feet is the typical maximum. And the other part of it is for internal illumination with a yellow background and dark lettering, where typically internally illuminated signs are required to have dark backgrounds and light lettering. Subject property is 9.17 acres in size. There is an existing permitted RV park on the property. And then there are two structures that are sort of abandoned, and they were used as a trading post and a small motel. So here is the vicinity map. So in this white circle is where the subject property is. You can see that basically a third of the property right up adjacent to Highway 89 here is in the commercial zone, and the rest of it's general. And it is adjacent to National Park Service on the east, Coconino National Forest on the south, State Trust Land on the north, and the property across, I think, is animal feed sales. It also is split zoned between the commercial and general zones. And I think that that use occurs on the just the commercial property side of it. This is sort of a zoomed in aerial here. So you can see here's Highway 89. This is the subject property. This is where the historic motel was further to the south. To the north of that is the trading post. And behind those buildings from 89 are where the existing RV park is situated with 12 units there. And here are some photos. So the first on top is a photo of the subject property from Highway 89. Again, trading post, motel. This is the actual sign here. And then here on the bottom, you can see a better photo of the sign as it exists today. For some background on the property, the trading post and motel uses were initiated in 1956. Those have since been abandoned. And the sign appears to have been built in 1957. That sign has pieces to it that are basically what the request of this variance is asking for. The sign height and internal illumination are both part of a grandfathering, or what staff often calls a legal non-conforming situation. And because the uses that the sign advertised had been abandoned for a period of 180 days or longer, they lost their grandfathering. And typically in that situation, the property owner would have to remove the sign or modify it to meet current standards. The applicant, when they bought the property in 2021, wanted to just get the business started of the RV park and see if they could get the variance for these issues from the Board of Adjustment within a 6-month period of being approved for the RV park use being kind of reinstated. So staff allowed for a temporary certificate of occupancy for 6 months in order to see how the board would make the decision, whether or not they would have to remove portions of the sign or whether they'd be approved for the variance and allowed to keep it as is. So as far as sign height, I have a picture from before the current property owner bought the property. And you'll see that it historically had a couple different panels here. There was also some signage on a parapet on the trading post building. Those have been removed. And on the right-hand side, you can see more of what's actually there. So as far as the height, it's at 22 feet from natural grade. Everything under the 17-foot height mark was actually approved by staff. Even though the typical allowance for height maximum for a sign is 15 feet, staff is allowed a very small allowance to adjust that in what's called an administrative adjustment. So staff did approve up to 17 feet, everything under it that you see here in this photo to the right. And these aren't currently internally illuminated. These last sort of panels here below the 17-foot line, those are actually, there's banners that are affixed to what's there. As far as internal illumination, the yellow color of the top panel is typically not permitted as a background for an internally illuminated sign. As the Board of Adjustment knows, we're in a dark skies county, and so we regulate lighting for human and wildlife health, as well as just to preserve the night sky for observation from professional observatories, as well as just amateur astronomy. And so with the light colored background, obviously you're going to get more light from it from an internally illuminated sign. Historically, this sort of sign would have had a different lamp type than what currently most applicants put inside signs for internal illumination. Usually they're using LEDs, which do have more of a blue range and a more output of light than what would have been done historically. And I think we do have Mark Stento, who is our dark skies compliance specialist, on with us. So if there are any questions about that as we move forward or anything, there was a section of the staff report which was a little bit technical, so I asked him to be online with us if you have any questions about that. But basically, if the Board of Adjustment is able to otherwise make the findings of fact for approval of the variance, staff did recommend limiting the lamp type and or color temperature in condition number 2 in order to reduce its light impact similarly to what would have historically been in there, and to be substantially consistent with what normally we allow for signs that are internally illuminated outside of the variance context. As far as citizen participation, staff sent letters to neighbors within 300 feet of the subject property, and obviously it wasn't many, and no responses were received. And for these findings, I wanted to actually go through exactly what was written in the staff report, just to be clear about them. So the board is aware that you will have to make one of—
Zach?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I could have gone back and looked this up, but just so I can understand what you're telling us now, the variance is really just talking about that top yellow background sign. We're not talking about the 3 below it, right?
Mr. McCartney, so yeah, I actually wonder if we can get a little bit more clarification from the applicant, because my understanding is that they wanted to keep the entirety of the sign similar to what it is here, and it was sort of a temporary situation to have these new not internally lit signs at the bottom, these sections here. I thought it was the internal illumination variance was sort of just was actually for the entirety of the sign, and this is a temporary situation here. And you know, Madam Chair, if you're interested, we could probably clarify that now.
I would prefer that we do clarify it now, just so that as we get more information coming in, we know exactly what we're hearing and to be able to reference it.
Sure. So then in that case, if we could have the applicant explain, is it the long-term goal to have the entire sign have the yellow background and dark lettering to be consistent with the historic nature? That was my understanding. And that these panels below are just sort of temporary, or what's the situation?
So, hi, I'm Shelley Smithson, one of the owners of Grand Canyon Oasis. And I am not honestly sure how to answer the question. So at the moment, the signs that are up there are, you know, kind of placeholders, just to get us open for business and have a sign. But yeah, we would like all three of those fingers on the sign to be illuminated, as well as the Antelope Hills part. And as far as the color, it was my understanding that the yellow was just an issue on the top. But I mean, there is another panel that is yellow. I mean, we do like the variety of colors on the sign. We don't want it just to be all yellow like the previous sign was. So to answer your question, I hope, we would want part of the sign to still be like red or dark colors, you know, like the red and maybe a darker green on the bottom, or turquoise. But the middle ones, yeah, would still be that kind of historic harvest yellow. That's kind of, you know, what you think of when you think of a 1950s sign. So, and we would like all those to be illuminated. And you know, we're pretty open to colors and stuff, but you know, we like the yellow. It's already painted yellow. And so, you know, if we could keep the yellow, that'd be great.
Okay, and so just to clarify, so if we're looking at this picture on the screen here, then these are currently just their banners right now are, yeah, just to fix there. But instead, you would like to, not only with the top portion, keep that sort of how it is, but also internally illuminate these with sort of the colors that we're seeing here on these bottom three panels?
Correct.
Okay.
And yeah, keeping the top the yellow that it already is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair and Mr. McCartney, I want to make it clear that even with this information, staff's analysis is the same as it had been in the staff report.
Can I ask a quick question, Zach? This is Chris. Yeah, this is Chris. And I'm just to clarify in my own head. So these lower three signs would also be backlit with the lettering being the darker portion. So the light would still come through around the lettering, like the top one. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess what the applicant or owner just clarified for us is that not only would it be the top panel that would be internally illuminated, the entirety of it, but all of these panels that you see here.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I don't think that that substantially changes staff's recommendation or the way that it's the findings are analyzed. And I wanted to just go through staff's analysis of the findings, just to be clear. So the Board of Adjustment has to make one of the first three findings in order to approve the case, and both of D and E. And so the first finding is related to, is there a practical difficulty or unnecessary physical hardship related to this case? And in the staff report, staff's analysis is that staff considers the removal of a portion of an existing historical sign's height as a physical hardship in the case. The yellow sign face on the sign that advertises uses no longer in operation would likely need to be refurbished, but not necessarily replaced, which could be a practical difficulty. I go on to discuss in the applicant's narrative that they point to the zoning ordinance and the general purpose of implementing the comprehensive plan. And the applicant references a comprehensive plan goal and policy related to general historical preservation. And the narrative includes technical engineering evidence to support the sign size request as a physical hardship, and general language from our comprehensive plan as evidence to support the illumination request as a physical hardship. So for B, The finding is that there's a pre-existing exceptional or extraordinary circumstance related to the property that the property owner didn't self-impose. And staff's analysis of that finding is that a historic 22-foot tall and internally illuminated sign with yellow background and dark lettering has existed on the property historically, and that the property was bought by the applicant with that condition having been there. As far as finding C, that's that the applicant would be otherwise denied of a privilege that most people, property owners in that zone would have, and staff is not able to make that finding. The applicant would be able to construct a freestanding sign in compliance with height and internal illumination standards that other property owners in the same zone would be able to have without approval of this request. Finding D is basically that the variance as condition would be the minimum to accomplish the purpose of the request, and that it wouldn't be a special privilege that other people in the same zone aren't able to have. And staff's response to that is that the existing sign and illumination is the minimum to accomplish the purpose of the variance. Signs now are not allowed to be internally illuminated with the lighter color as the background, with the dark letters. And it's possible that the board could find this to be a special privilege. However, staff's recommended condition on the internal illumination would mitigate additional advertising presence from a brighter sign that other property owners in the same zone wouldn't have. And for finding E, basically that's the public safety and health finding, and staff is able to make that finding. And as far as findings 1 and 2 here, which are additional findings related only to signs, staff finds that this request wouldn't detract from the attractiveness or orderliness of the area. And again, that there would be no public safety hazard involved with approval of this variance. So just to generally go over staff's analysis, staff definitely recognizes the importance of historic preservation and in keeping a historic sign, but the Board of Adjustment has to make the finding as prescribed in the zoning ordinance. So in this case, I think what the board will be looking at especially is the hardship of removing what's already there versus what is the special privilege. And definitely there are some hardships in changing the sign. It's existed there for 65 years. And staff believes that with the lighting minimizing conditions that were written in the staff report, there would be a low impact and no unfair advertising advantage provided by approving this request. So with that, if the board is able to make the required findings of fact, staff recommends approval of case VAR 22005, subject to the conditions of the staff report. I did want to make condition number 2 a little bit clearer. So I apologize. Looking back through the staff report, I think that it should be clear. We should add this sentence if the board is able to make the findings for approval, just that internal illumination with the yellow background and dark letters as historically existing on the freestanding sign is hereby permitted, and then the rest of the condition would stay the same. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Zach, this is John. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, so I think what you just said was that these conditions suggested recommended conditions at the end of your report, if we can make the findings. Number 2, you're thinking that the variance is just for that top existing kind of circular yellow sign, and that those three signs below it that are all new colors and everything, that those would be subject to standard county requirements for signage.
Mr. McCartney, yes, I think that's the way that this was written.
Did we lose John?
Looks like Brian, you had a question also.
I did, and I think I've answered it, but just to be clear, there was a reference earlier to these being historic buildings. I want to make sure that I'm interpreting it accurately in that historic is an adjective there. It is not a designation as a nationally historic registered building. Is that accurate?
Mr. Bates, I'm not aware of these structures being on the historic register, but that's something that the applicant could touch on as well if they know.
I want to make sure that I'm interpreting it accurately.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of them being on a historic register.
Thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome.
Shelley, can you do me a favor since you spoke during the presentation? Could you just again identify yourself and your mailing address, please?
Yes, Shelley Smithson, and my mailing address is 3200 Shanto Trail, Flagstaff, 86005. I'm an owner of Grand Canyon Oasis, LLC.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, so John, are you gone or back?
I'm still here. You talking to me?
Yeah, okay, good. We weren't sure if we had lost you for a second or not. Okay, good.
Yeah, I still
go ahead.
Looking at the variance, I'm not seeing in here anything that's strictly or that says that the color variant part of the variance is only for the top sign. I think it's talking about the whole thing. And I look at those new lower signs that have completely different colors as being, you know, I would judge that differently than the one at the top. If I'm reading this right, it's if we were to approve this variance with the allowing the different, you know, colors and intensities and all that, then I think we're approving the, you know, the whole sign to be, you know, as is shown in the application where it shows that middle sign is being bright yellow and the orange background one. And I'm thinking that those do not meet the current codes. And I think those would be judged differently in my book anyway. So maybe I don't understand the way the variance is put together or requested.
Madam Chair, I can kind of clarify that.
Please do. I think when I did read this, I had a little confusion also. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I think it wasn't especially clear in the application exactly which part of the sign, and there was maybe an assumption made, but I think that we can craft the way that condition number 2 would be written in order to meet the needs of the Board of Adjustments, as far as whether if we're only able to make the internal illumination findings for the top panel based on what's shown here, then I've just written in some language that I think would specify that we're looking at just the top panel. And then the rest of the panels would have to have, if they're replacing those panels, they would have to have dark background and light lettering. The internal illumination requirements that are above and beyond the typical standard in the zoning ordinance, like that are in the condition number 2, wouldn't apply if they were doing the dark background light lettering on the other two, and all of this condition would just apply to the top panel. And so I've written on this slide what I think might be some good wording to basically add to the first sentence of condition number 2. And if there's discussion with the board where we want to further modify that, I'll try my best to keep up with you all and kind of type in what you're thinking there. But just to reread that for you, a sentence that we would add to condition number 2, it would be the first sentence of that condition, would say internal illumination with a yellow background and dark letters as historically existing on the freestanding sign is hereby permitted for the top panel of the existing sign. And if any of you would like to wordsmith it further, I'm happy to kind of type that out so we have it for the record.
Zach, I think you actually, when you were reading it, you paused there, and I think you're correct. It should read as historically existed. Would it be past tense or is it current tense?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, Mr. Bates, that going through the permitting process, I'll understand the meaning, or any of my staff members will understand the meaning of kind of what this is going for, but I changed it to past tense. Seems a little more correct.
Yeah, that's my interpretation also.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mark Stinto if he is available.
Yeah, I'm in the meeting. Note that I am in the field, so I'm on my mobile device. How's my connection? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you quite well, sir. First, I want to thank you for the service you do on the part of Dark Skies. I'm a strong advocate of it. My question here is about the amount of light that would be coming through on the yellow background, and whether that poses any known, obviously it's not going to affect drivers because it's trying to attract them, but if it poses any issues with birds or with other wildlife.
Well, so certainly any illumination is going to be more impactful than no illumination.
Correct.
That applies, of course, to even a sign that meets the current standards. Our efforts to mitigate that are the requirement of a 2700K or less bulb, which is going to more closely resemble the spectral output, certainly not precisely by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly more closely resemble the spectral output of incandescent lights on which the sign was designed around. 2700K or less will minimize the short wavelength light produced by the luminaires, and I can't say for certain. The material itself may have some mild filtering effect. Based on my testing when I was doing the lighting thing full time with the city, materials varied wildly in terms of their impact on various wavelengths of light. So I think our recommendation of 2700K or less will substantially reduce impact, both to drivers and to wildlife in the area at night as well. Jack, do we have any total illumination limitations on there, or were we entirely CCT? I do not recall.
Yeah, we didn't have that. We just had CCT.
Right.
Could you define CCT, please?
Correlated color temperature. So that's the temperature of the luminaires. Now, there's not a direct correlation between a lower color temperature or a warmer color temperature and spectral output, in the sense that you could say a 2700K bulb is going to have X amount of blue or white light, which is shorter wavelength, more impactful light. However, there is a more broad correlation. So as you go down or go toward warmer temperature LEDs, you generally see a substantial change in the visible wavelength of light produced, favoring more the longer wavelength reds, oranges, all the way up into the infrared, of course. And that longer wavelength light is similar in output, or at least a predisposition towards producing more of it to what we see in incandescent lights, which again are almost certainly the technology the original sign was built around.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what I'm hearing is that you don't have any concern about, and I was thinking primarily about coyote and antelope, because they are or have historically been in that region.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I will say this. I would say our recommendations will likely make the sign no more impactful than it was as originally constructed. You know, the sign itself is not huge, and it would be hard to fit an incredible amount of illumination in there. You know, assigning an arbitrary lumen limit to the interior of the sign would be likely that it'd be arbitrary, right? We don't have any sort of standard to fall back on with that. But no, from doing this a while, you know, again, there's always going to be some impact. But, you know, that sign with 2700K or warmer bulbs is going to be substantially less impact, in my opinion, than, for example, a white LED spotlight that you're going to see on the front of, you know, numerous structures out there in the area, and that are potentially permissible under the county's somewhat outdated but current outdoor lighting standards. So there will be impact. I think if we were to shift, you know, energy into concern about wildlife in the area, I think we would be misplacing that concern if we focused on impact of this sign specifically. I don't think it's really going to be measurable compared to other luminaires in the area.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Zach at this time?
So,
yes, I do have a question, actually.
Okay.
I didn't realize I was on mute. I thought I was already asking it.
Okay.
Yeah, Zach, when does a sign become more than one sign? And this is actually 4 signs. Just for clarification for me, is it all considered one because it's on one post? Is it because it's all one freestanding object?
Mr. Wani, yeah, basically it's because it's all attached to this one single pole is why we're considering it a single sign.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So at this time, we don't have many people, anybody in the public here other than people who are contributing that I'm aware of. So Zach has given his presentation from staff. The board now has asked additional questions. At this time, we would go to the applicant to see if the applicant has any information that they would like to share that hasn't been discussed and that's not in the report, or any clarifications or anything that the applicant would like to contribute.
Yeah, I can you hear me okay?
Yes. And
Great.
again, can you state your full name and your mailing address for the record, please?
Absolutely. James Carpentier, 3626 North Desert Oasis, Mesa, Arizona. And I'm the applicant here on behalf of the owner, Shelley Smith. And it's nice to meet Zach via Zoom. I've talked to you quite a bit, but certainly not been able to see you. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I'll try to hit some points that weren't covered that I think the board may want to hear about. So I'll just, I'll try not to duplicate what Zach has covered. But we're in, full agreement that the variance is necessary for the preservation of substantial property rights. And we think that stricter literal interpretation of the regulations would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary physical hardship, inconsistent with the objectives of the zoning ordinance. So in light of that, we request that the board make the finding in regard to sign illumination, which has been talked about quite a bit. And I would agree wholeheartedly with Mark that the impact of the sign would be minimal based on my experience measuring signs in quite a bit different locations. And there is a lot of variability, but I'm quite sure the impact would be minimal with this sign. And we are in agreement with the staff's finding that the removal of the existing historical sign's height as a physical hardship. We recommend that the board find in regards to it's an unnecessary physical hardship for illumination standards, since to not make this finding would be inconsistent with the objectives of the Coconino County zoning ordinance and the county comprehensive plan. The purpose of the zoning code is to implement the vision, goals, objectives, and policies of the Coconino County comprehensive plan. The historic and cultural resources section of the comprehensive plan states the following. And there's a goal that states protect the county's historic, cultural, and architectural heritage. In policy 16, the county encourages the preservation and celebration of cultural heritage, as well as the protection of historic and architectural resources. And as far as the height variance request, due to the increased setback of this sign approximately, which is about 50 feet from the right-of-way, removing the top portion of the sign would result in a physical hardship due to circumstances unique to the property as indicated by Zach. This hardship relates to this property and not only conditions general to the area. The increased setback compromises visibility, legibility of the sign due to the location being outside of the recommended 10-degree cone of vision. Sorry, I'm getting a little technical, but I just want to read it into the record. As stated in the evidence-based and model code, which you folks should have received a copy, and I think it's attached to the report. For reading purposes, the visual field is 10 degrees or less. A driver's ability to observe and react to a sign outside the cone of vision drops rapidly outside this limit. Therefore, any reduction in the sign height will certainly exasperate the visibility and legibility of the sign, since it would not be within the recommended 10-degree cone of vision. Therefore, we would request that the board make the finding that for internal illumination and to maintain the original colors of the sign face in order to be consistent with the objectives of the Coconino County zoning ordinance and policies of the Coconino County comprehensive plan. And I'm just talking about the top portion. And can I just ask Zach a question? Would I be out of order if I did that?
No, you are welcome to ask staff question.
Thank you. For the permit that was issued for the bottom portion of the sign, did that include illumination or not?
Did not include illumination.
Okay.
I think in particularly if you can see my mouse, this panel would not have met the typical internal illumination standards.
But if it has the colors that follows the code, it could be internally illuminated, correct?
Right. I would say that this panel, this one with red in the background and yellow as the letters, would meet the current code for internal illumination as well.
Okay, so if the panels are just a little darker and met the intent of that code, they could be illuminated.
That would be allowable by right, yes.
Which I would say as the applicant that's desired. So, but I've got a couple other things I wanted to mention too. Clearly, we believe that the historic 22-foot tall internally illuminated sign with a yellow background and dark lettering has existed on the property since 1957 and is in existing condition, and it will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. And we certainly agree with the additional findings that are required for the sign variance, that it won't detract from the attractiveness of the neighborhood, and also that it won't create a public hazard or safety as verified by the engineering division, and also from Dark Skies Compliance Division. So we respectfully request that the Board of Adjustment make the required findings of fact as recommended by staff and approve the variance request to allow for the 22-foot height and the illuminated yellow sign background where and darker text, and the 3 conditions as recommended by staff, which would allow for the variance number 1 of 7 feet, and number 2, the internal illumination of the sign shall be an incandescent lamp or other lamp types under 2700 K. And just as a side note, the internal illumination with this sign originally would have been neon. That was what was built almost exclusively back then for internal illumination, as approved by Dark Skies Compliance Specialist. And number 3, a building permit shall be obtained for electrical as required by code. And thanks for your consideration, and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any question for the applicant?
John does
I have
not.
a question.
Excuse me, John does not.
This is Brian. I have a question that could go to either Zach and or the applicant. And because the applicant brought it up, what exactly does the variance determine per the small size sign illumination? Are we if we were to approve this, are we approving illumination of those 3 signs or not?
Right now, the application is for the top portion. The bottom portion would meet code as far as how it's currently written, and we would comply with whatever current code is for the bottom portion of the sign.
Thank you, sir.
So there's no variances needed for the top. And Shelley, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I hear no corrections.
As I understand it, the only reason we would need a variance for the bottom portions of the sign is if we were to have yellow on that middle one, if we were to keep it as yellow, which, you know, we wouldn't mind doing because it would tie it all together, but we're not totally wed to that. Like, well, whatever needs to happen, we're okay with.
So you're okay either way if they wanted to have it intact, more historically to go that way, or just to meet the code as written in relation to darker background and lighter letters?
Correct.
Okay.
You know, our preference would be to keep one of those panels yellow, just to tie it to the top, so it kind of is a nice color combination. However, I'm sure we could make it look good if we went with like 2 other darker colors on the bottom 2 panels as well.
So Zach, what I'm hearing then is that however we vote is not affecting the small sign illumination. And were they to do that, it would have to be in compliance with current code.
Well, Madam Chair, Mr. Bates, so are you able to see I have a Word document open now? Are you able to see that, or are you still seeing my PowerPoint?
I'm still seeing your PowerPoint.
Okay. I guess in the application and going through some of the analysis, and I'm going to try to find the unshare here so that I can show this. Okay. There's maybe a little bit of confusion in going through the application and putting up the as to which panels exactly were part of the request. And I think that the way that the staff report was written was about the top panel only. But I guess whichever way that the board is able to make the findings of fact, we can modify this condition number 2 to clarify. And I think the board in your discussion can discuss whether or not this variance should be for all of the panels or just the top panel. I've written here in bold some addition to this condition to try to clarify that. And I've highlighted that it's about the top panel. And if the board is able to make that for these findings for the other panels, then we can modify this condition, and specifically, I think the highlighted portion here. I think some of the analysis of the request was based on just kind of refurbishing what was there. And I think there's a picture in the staff report of where it historically was all of the panels were yellow and just changing the lettering. So I think that's primarily how staff was able to make some of the findings. But I think it's up to the board to decide whether or not they can extend, whether or not that's applicable to the top panels, internal illumination, or it sounded like the applicant was also willing to try to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance with some of the lower panels, but wanted to really keep at least the historic character of that top panel. So I guess I would have to sort of see wherever the board lands on it. I'm happy to modify the language of this condition. So clear as mud, I'm sure, but if there are any other questions that I can help with, let me know.
This is Chris. I don't have any questions at this time.
This is Brian. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I actually, it seems like every time I have a community development board of adjustment meeting, I have internet problems. So I really apologize. I had to call in. So I'm trying to load back in, but right now I am on my phone connecting with you. Just want you to know I'm here. I lost me for a second on there. So can you just give me, I did miss a little bit. Are we just right now clarifying the last that we're clarifying that we're only talking about the top sign, and the 3 signs below it will be do not need to be included in this because they will fall under normal zoning, correct?
Madam Chair, this is Zach Schwartz with planning staff. Let me try to just kind of go over the last part of the conversation that I think you might have missed. And I see that you've at least entered, I think this, or you're entering currently this. So I have something on the screen that is the condition number 2 that staff is recommending with some modified language. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but I think the question was brought up about which panel or panels of the internal of the sign do the internal illumination variance, which does it apply to? And I explained that the staff's understanding at the time of writing the staff report was that we were just talking about the top panel of the sign. I think the applicant's saying they would like it if there was a consideration of the other panels of the sign as well. And so basically I put it that whichever way the board can make the findings of fact, we can modify the language of this condition number 2, and I can read it to you if you're not able to see it.
No, I'm back in, so I'm fine. I can see it again.
Okay,
I hung up the phone.
Sounds good. So I think there was a lack of clarity about exactly what the applicant was looking for. Staff understood it at the time to be the top panel, and we can modify this as you all are able or not able to make the findings, this condition number 2, especially the highlighted section, but all of the dark text, the bold text, is what staff is recommending adding to the condition number 2. And I think that the applicant said, you know, we're looking at changing some of the possibly the signs that are not the top panel portions of the sign. So they said that they might be able to just meet the normal zoning ordinance requirements with those.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
This is Brian, if I may. My concern here is that since we're dealing with this variance, what I don't want to have happen is for this to come back in, say, 4 months, and there's another request for a variance to illuminate the small signs. And so I'm not advocating for one or the other. I just don't want to be doing redundant meetings on the same parcel. Does it make sense for us to address the 3 signs and their illumination and coloration at this point?
Mr. Bates, I guess the way I could put this is that if it was, I think the main concern is the top portion panel of the sign.
Right.
And I think that that should really be the focus of the board's discussion.
Okay.
If you're all willing to extend that, to, you know, as presented and as we've gone through the analysis of that to the other portions of the sign, you're certainly willing, or you're certainly able to do so. But I think that probably the top panel is remaining mostly the same. In staff's opinion, it makes the most sense for this request to focus on the top panel.
Yeah. Could I just add something? Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the application really dealt with the top portion because we were aware of a permit that was issued for the bottom portion. So it really didn't, we made no mention of the other panels at all. So sorry if there was any confusion over that, but it dealt with just the height variance and the top portion of the sign. Just to clarify that as far as from the application standpoint.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I have no other questions.
Thank you. Yeah, my concern, a question, I was actually trying to get back to the and see that, I don't know if our dark sky specialist is still on or not, but when the is there any the dark sky would want to put record here regarding the 3 other signs? And I'm not sure that maybe they were addressed in there was a lot of information. So but that was one of the things I was trying to clarify.
Madam Chair, let me see. Mark, are you still on? It shows you're still on.
I'm still on. I'm sorry. I had to take a code enforcement related call. Was there a specific question for me?
Yeah, I guess I'll just try to paraphrase it here. So there is, I guess, a little bit of confusion about, you know, there are multiple panels on this sign. You recall looking at it, I'm sure. The original thought was that the applicant was just looking for the internal illumination, as you've kind of helped me with that condition for number 2 for the top portion of the sign. Mm-hmm. And our chair Patterson is asking if there are concerns from a dark skies compliance standpoint about whether or not if you would have any concerns about extending that variance about internal illumination to the other portions of that sign.
No, we're talking about extending the 2700K requirement to the remainder of the illuminated sign interiors. My understanding. Yeah, that would be, you know, 2700K bulbs are readily available in a variety of formats. I purchased them for many years with the city for a variety of projects. They're easy to get. They're relatively inexpensive. I don't think it would place a real burden on anyone to do that, nor do I think it would negatively affect the sign. Yeah, I wouldn't have any reservations about it. I don't think there would be a particularly big impact from those lower signs, simply because of the size. But yeah.
Zach, I have a quick question. This is Chris. I'm looking at what is written here and it's saying 2.7K. And I thought I just heard Mark say 27K. I just would like clarification as to what that number should be.
It should be 2,700 Kelvin.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Oh, I got it. Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for your time and to clarify that. I think that's very important that put any other verbiage in here to know that. So I appreciate it. Okay, does anyone else have any questions at this time? And I haven't asked if there's anybody that is attending that in the audience that wants to speak on this. I don't, but if there is, could you please identify yourself at this time? Okay, if we don't have anyone from the public, then I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting and we can go have a conversation among the staff time. At this point, if we have questions of the applicant or questions of staff, we will reach out to ask, but otherwise we'll just have discussion among the board members.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Do I leave the Zoom now?
No, because we might have more questions. It's just,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so right now we're gonna deliberate on the case. We might and we might come back if we're gonna make if we're gonna suggest some change to this. Then we normally will like to ask the applicant if that you know, if we're gonna make adjustment is suitable to them. So we might have some questions for you, let you know what the process is at this time. So so we have Brian, John, Chris, and myself as the board, and we of course have to make our findings of fact and on the case. And before, I would just like to say I appreciate very much all the information was shared with us and the historic knowledge and really great package. I love the history. So I think the staff and anyone contributed to that, and also James for all the information that was brought to us. So thank you. I look at that sign and I'm going to Lake Powell, or I'm going it's going somewhere fun. I'm always leaving town and heading to the Four Corners when I'm passing it. So would any of you guys like to start?
This is Brian. I have no questions or comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is John. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I could make findings D and E for the height and for the colors and stuff. But as far as the A, B, or C, I felt like on A, I could make the sign height pretty easily. And it's a hardship. It's, you know, it's been there forever. It doesn't look oversized for the project. And I think we've done things like that in the past. It's the historical sign there. And I like actually having, you know, staying with the same colors and intensity in that for the historical sign on the top. And so I actually could make finding A for that as well. But for the three smaller signs below, since they're really new they want to change from the historical, and the presentation, at least one of them was very bright, and it's really not in the variance. It doesn't request any, doesn't speak to those, and so it's not really part of the variance. I don't feel that they should have any special treatment. It hasn't been asked for in the variance for any special treatment for any variance. And so I think we should include the extra verbiage in recommendation 2 that Zach had supplied to us. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, or is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would just like to kind of piggyback on what John has already said. I also agree that finding A and B both apply. I can make both those findings as well as D and E. I don't know that I put as much weight on the historical as far as the findings are concerned, because I'm not really seeing in the findings anything that leads to that necessarily. But as far as the hardship and compliance with the conditions as stated in 1, 2, and 3, I can comfortably say that I can go with finding A, finding B, finding D, and E.
Okay. So I think at this point, I'm also in agreement with that. Is do you want to revise number 2 to say that the yellow background with dark letters can be used for all 4 panels?
This is Brian. First of all, I would agree with, A and B, D and E. But I find myself at odds with granting the 3 smaller sizes as being having a background of yellow. My recommendation would have been to use a dark color with a light color with the verbiage, such as you might have a brown with a yellow with the words. But I think given some of the comments we've heard, the applicant is amenable to having maintained the red color and I believe it was like a blue-green color. But I would not be in favor of granting the 3 smaller signs all being a yellow background.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris or John, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, this is Chris. Personally, I would not be opposed to 1 additional yellow background as they showed in their picture. But again, that's not something we're really necessarily addressing right now.
Okay.
I think, maybe going with all 4, that does bring it back to the original sign, but I don't feel it's, as far as the findings are concerned, I don't really see that as necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. John, any input? I think we might have lost audio. So, but great, we have half. I'm fine with the way that number 2 is written this time. I think that the staff can work with and to come up with a line. We'll leave the historic part on the top panel. We'll go with the height, and then they can work the other 3 signs together under their the sign code. So if there's no further discussion, I think we have a consensus if somebody would like to make a motion.
I move that we accept the variance as presented in today's discussion. Is that an acceptable motion?
Okay, so actually this is Brian, first time that he's on the board making a motion. So basically the terminology would be that you vote to approve rather than accept. And if you do, I mean, you move to approve. And the only thing is that if we do have conditions to the variance, which are up on the screen, we have 3 conditions. They need to be referenced in the motion. So if you would like to modify your motion, that would be great.
So I move to approve the variance with the inclusion of the 3 stipulations as, how would I say this? As presented at the end of the county's recommendations.
That works for me.
Thank you.
This is Chris. I would second that motion.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Diane's and I, and John, are you out there? I think.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't know I was muted. Yeah, I think we need to include in the motion, you know, the title, the variance number, but more importantly, to mention that recommendation 2, as modified by Zach in the meeting, needs to be in there to make sure that we get, as he's revised it there, that it references just the top panel.
Okay, so you're asking for Brian to modify his motion. And he's Brian, you're only going to modify that. You're going to say that you that the motion is to approve the variance with the 3 stipulations provided by staff, including the change to item 2, the addition. How's that?
I'll try. So
sometimes we need help from Marty or Zach. Yeah. We get to this point.
I move that we approve the variance with the inclusion of the 3 items, and particularly that they include the reference that this applies only to the top portion of the sign as edited by Mr. Zach Schwartz during the meeting.
This is Chris. I second.
Okay, very good. Then all in favor?
Aye.
John's an aye.
Chris is aye.
Diane's an aye. So we have approved it unanimously. So thank you very much for your time. It's exciting building back in business. That's I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Shelley, you're approved for that top panel staying, and that one can be internally illuminated as it was. If you have any questions about that, give me a call.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
okay.
everyone.
And thanks to all the board. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks to the board and to you, Zach and Mark and everyone else. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you, folks.
A motion to adjourn.
This is John. I move to adjourn the meeting and come back if needed next month.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Aye.
Jack.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Diane, you were
Thanks.
cutting out there at the end.
Okay, I know. I just Starlink that I didn't there. I finally come up on the list, but their price went up. It's ridiculous. In the middle of this meeting, I'm like, why Starlink?
Oh man, yeah, I was thinking of getting their service, so I'll keep that in mind.
But they went from 500 start fee 50, and then they upped it to 135 a month.
Wow.
So it was a little, yeah, but like today I would have been paid. Yeah, it got a little much, but it seems like every Zoom I've been having lately is not doing well. So that's not good. All right. Well, thank you, Zach. You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.